in agreeing with God, but also agreeing with other people, God has this very special blessing that He gives, leading to our healing, and I would add freedom as well. Our second key is that we confess. In 1 John 1 verse 9 it says, "If we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness." That word translated as confess simply means to speak the same thing, and in this instance we are speaking the same thing as with God. This is why it's important that we understand how our sin is wrong, that we understand His definition of our sin, that we understand that our actions have been wrong and that His intentions are right. The word promises that when we agree with God where we blew it, where we were wrong, not trying to excuse it, but agreeing with Him, He will forgive us and cleanse us from every trace of unrighteousness. I see it's important that we confess two things here. The first is that yes, we confess, we're open with God about where we missed it, but also we agree with Him and thank Him for the fact that He has forgiven our sins and cleansed us from every trace of unrighteousness as well. Then I encourage you guys in this powerful aspect of confession as well, found in James 5 verse 16, where it says, "Confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed." You see, the word shows us here that in agreeing with God, but also agreeing with other people, God has this very special blessing that He gives, leading to our healing, and I would add freedom as well. I would encourage you guys to recognize the people God has placed in your life who you can be open with about the things that are going on in your lives. When it comes to sexual things, I would encourage it to be among the same gender. You might only even recognize one person, and that's okay. Where two or more are gathered, Jesus has a special presence in your midst. This is a time where you guys can come together and confess, but not to hide, not to draw back, but to recognize that God has a very powerful gift for your freedom, for your restoration, for your healing, through your agreement with Him and with others. You guys can come together and confess, look, I blew it here, I missed it here, but also confess together, but the Lord has forgiven me and He has cleansed me from all unrighteousness. One thing that can be very helpful when it comes to sexual sin is recognizing why we are drawn to give ourselves to particular messages. This is something helpful to ask the Lord about, and He can show you. He can bring certain memories to mind. For many people, it happens to be something that happened in their childhood where something went off and then they started believing a specific lie that now plays itself out in a particular sinful pattern. It also can be helpful to talk about this with other people, and this is a place where counselors have a place as well. But in all this, bring the Lord into it. Allow Him to shine His light on your heart and reveal the lies that you're believing so that you can now renounce the lies and agree with His truth instead. So our first key was to understand our sin, understand God's intentions. But the second key is to confess to God, confess our sin, but also confess our cleansing from our sin, confess it with God and confess it with others.